Welcome to the Vintage Gun Journal and the first or third of our series called Interview with the Gunmaker. I'm Diggory Hadoke, and our guest today is a man who's been in the gun trade a relatively short amount of time compared to some of our other guests, but in that time he's managed to include a stint at three of the gun trade's best known names, Acton Grant and Lang, Westley Richards and James Purdey, and now he's on his own as Ian Sweetman. So please welcome Ian to the Interview with the Gunmaker. Ian, welcome. So thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself to start with. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Dunstable, which is about sort of 25 miles north of London. Pretty much standard growing up, really. Good mix of sort of town and country, living in a town, and my uncle had a farm, so that sort of led me to have a sort of bit of the interest in the countryside and stuff like that as well, which is good. But yeah, just the bog standard upbringing, really.
Were you always interested in guns and shooting from a young age? Is it something you got from your father or from a brother?
Yeah, my grandfather used to shoot. He used to shoot quite a lot, and then my father did as well. When sort of my parents got together, that sort of got him into shooting a bit more. So I used to go beating a lot on the shoots that my grandfather shot on. So yeah, I've always had an interest in guns, really, even when I was really young, sort of with. I remember having like BB guns and stuff like that and taking them apart and tinkering with them and bits and bobs like that. So, yeah. And
did your parents encourage your interest in guns and shooting, or was it something a little bit odd for them?
No, very, very much so. Yeah, as I say, my dad sort of was the first one to teach me how to shoot, and it was a typical sort of, there's a gun, we'll walk around the field and see if we can shoot a pigeon type introduction. But yeah, no, they've both been very supportive of that sort of thing, so which is good. Because I can imagine if your parents didn't, it's quite a difficult trade at the best of times, and if you didn't have support of people around you, it'd be quite difficult to broach.
Can you remember what your first gun was?
Yeah, actually, funnily enough, my first gun got dug out the other day because my dad, being off work, is doing a big clean out, and it was a break barrel 177 Gammo air rifle. Yeah, which is, literally only got a photo sent through the other day saying, "Do you remember this?" Yeah, I remember. I don't know how old I was, but it was. Yeah, I remember going to my grandfather's house, and he had two air rifles lent up in the greenhouse, and he said I could pick one to have, and that was that gun. So it's quite a good memory, really.
We seem to be having a few technical difficulties there. The screen froze for a while, but I think it's coming back together. It said your connection was unstable, but we seem to be okay, so we'll crack on. So your first job in the gun trade, was that your first job of any description, or did you have anything before?
Yeah, I mean, apart from like odds and sods, like doing a bit of gardening and stuff like that, my first job was Broom Hill shooting ground, and just general dog's body, really. I used to sort of fill the traps up, empty the bins, clean up, stuff like that. And again, I think at the time, I was probably maybe 12 or 13 when I first started working there. Yeah, and that was my first sort of weekend job. So I did that I did it for quite a while. I did it for about 4 or 5 years before I ended up working there full time. So yeah.
And did that just happen almost by accident, that you happened to be around and you got to know everybody?
No, my mum went and tested them. Actually, yeah. So it was sort of like our local gun shop. So that's where I used to get air gun pellets and stuff like that. Yeah, and basically my mum was pestering them one day, and she said that I could. They said that they'd give me a chance at having some Saturday work up there. And sort of the day I turned up, the guy, Dave Dimmock, who was the guy running the shop at the time, he didn't even know I was supposed to be there. I just turned up on the day and said, "Oh, I'm going to be helping you out," kind of thing. Yeah, and that was that, really. And that was quite a while I stayed there.
And that's where I first met you, of course. When I came along to Acton Grant and Lang, you were working in the workshop with the two chaps that were there at the time, yeah. Which was Carl Russell, who's now a successful gunmaker on his own account, and Alan Bowyer, who's still at Acting Grant and Lang and making their new guns for them. So how was it when you started working with those two, and what did you learn from them?
It was good because it was exciting and it was different. And having before that, all my previous jobs, well, not many, but the previous jobs had all been just sort of in a shop. So yeah, it was good. It was very, very different to other sort of apprenticeships, which I didn't really come to learn that until I did them at other places. But it was a very much a kind of hit the ground running sort of apprenticeship, whereby you need to make your money on the day that you arrive, and stuff like that. So it's quite high pressure, I would say, but overall quite good. Yeah.
And what sort of things did you work on in the early days there? What was your introduction to working on guns?
We would work on anything at the time. It was just anything that come through the door. So it'd be usual kind of gun shop kind of work, like strip and cleans and stuff like that. A lot of things like fitting pads, casting guns, and then that was probably the first sort of year or so was probably just that, oil finishing, strip and cleans, pads, etc. And then later on sort of start sort of rejoints and stuff like that. And sort of just general sort of gun repair, really.
But you presumably got to work on quite a lot of different guns, and you were seeing different actions and different mechanisms every day.
Yeah,
it's been good.
Yeah, as I sort of went on further and I could do more and more work. We worked on all sorts. So it's kind of it's a double-edged sword. The good side of it is you get some really interesting stuff to work on. The bad side of it is you get a lot of tap you have to work on as well when you sort of don't say no to a job. But yeah, I mean, everything from just English guns, continental guns. We didn't, in the whole time I was there, I think I maybe worked on one rifle, just because we didn't. That's the only sort of job that we sort of didn't take on there. But yeah, it was all sorts. It was anything and everything, and some jobs are a constant. Sort of doing up box locks at the time was quite a lucrative business, so we did a lot of that, and that would be reblack parts, new pins, rejoints, rechecker, stuff like that. But yeah, I would say pretty much all the sort of English guns, especially, different single triggers, different ejector work. Anything and everything that came through the door, we'd sort of work on.
Yeah, so that was your introduction, working in the workshop at Acting Grant and Lang, and that. Now I left a little bit before you, but not that long after I left. You were up the motorway to Westley Richards.
Yeah.
Just tell me a little bit about how you started your apprenticeship at Westley's and what your first day there was like.
My time at Westley's, my first day actually got lost. So I done the journey. Sorry.
Easily done on those roads.
Yeah, I'd done the journey in the car. I went in the day before. I was quite keen. So I went in the day before I started. I think I started midweek. So I went in the day before to drop my tools and everything off and get all that sorted. So I drove in, dropped my tools off. Everything was fine. And then on the actual day of starting work, I think we started work at 7. So I left probably about 5:30. Rode my bike to the train station, give myself plenty of time. And then got off the train at Snow Hill. And it realistically, it's a 5-minute bike ride, but I didn't know where I was going. So I got lost, and it was raining a lot. And I think sort of like an hour of riding around Birmingham went by before I managed to find it. Yeah, and I managed to find Price Street, which at the time I didn't really know that much about, apart from I knew that the ledgers were there. And I knocked on the door of one of the gunsmiths. And to be honest, I actually can't remember who it was, but it was up some stairs, and I kind of knocked on the door and said, "Look, I know it's really strange, but do you know where Westley Richards is? I'm supposed to be working there, and I don't know how to get there." And the guy in there was really nice. He directed me to where to go, which was literally straight down the road, and a left turn there. So I turned up about 3 hours late, soaking wet on my BMX, ready to start work. And that was sort of my first day, and it got better from there, kind of thing. So. And
who were you working with at the time? Was that Chris Soyser had left by then, had he?
No, it was my whole time there was well up until the last. I mean, I wasn't there for that a huge sort of amount of time, but my time there was working with Chris Soiser. He was the one that interviewed me along with Simon. Yeah, so he was my direct. Chris Soiser was my direct manager for sort of 90% of the time I was there.
And how was it working with Chris? He was an interesting character.
Yeah, he was a big character. It was different because I was very much, to be honest, I just didn't know what I was doing. Because I was tasked when I got there. It was one of them ones where you turn up and your job is what they need you to do on the day. So my job was bolt actions, and as I said previously, I'd never worked on one, and it was, well, you can file, you can do this, you can build these bolt actions. So I was like, well, okay. And I'd sort of be going to ask Chris for some advice, how to do this, how to do that, and he's just like, oh, just do it, just do whatever you want, and then sort of off you go. So yeah, it was a very strange way of doing things, but yeah, he was a really good guy. Yeah, well, really, really fond memories of him. You know, we had a really good time and a really good, we had a lot of laughs as well as sort of getting work cracked out and whatnot.
Yeah, he was a big character. I miss him. He was a very interesting man and had some exploits.
Definitely.
He was always full of stories.
Yeah, he had a good story or two, definitely.
So who was there at Westley Richards in terms of other gun makers? There must have been quite a lot of older chaps there that started to teach you things.
Not, to be honest, not really, because it was sort of a transitional time when I was there. And I think they'd had some guys leave, and not sort of managed to quite replenish the workforce. So at that time, the average age was probably very low compared to a lot of places. Mm-hmm. So in the bolt action shop at the time, it was only me, and then the more experienced actioner there, who was very, very good. He's the same age as me, so again, still at the time, I think he was probably like 20, like 23, 24, which in the grand scheme of things is quite young to be the most experienced in your sort of department. Mm. But they did have an older finisher there who was really good, who taught me some real good little hints and good little tricks. The stocking shop was always really good because they had, a couple of older stockers in there who really knew their way around. I mean, pretty much everything. They'd stock bolt rifles, double rifles, shotguns, whatever they fancied. But yeah, as a rule, at the time, it was a bit of a sort of a place where you sort of went in and you kind of learn on the job and learn quickly.
And did you get to know all the chaps at Price Street as well? Because it's just down the road, and presumably
we used to,
going on.
Yeah, I mean, we used to always go for drinks down the Bull on Friday. So Friday we used to do it was half day on Friday. So like 12 o'clock on Friday or 1 o'clock, whenever it was, we'd all go down the Bull and we'd see a lot of the other gun makers. It was kind of just like a tradition where everyone would just go down there for a pint at Friday lunchtime. Yeah, so that was nice. It was nice to meet them. There's nowhere else that had that sort of feel about it. The Birmingham gun trade is just a different sort of setup in that everyone knows each other. Yeah. And it was quite small and close knit. That was quite a nice part of it. Yeah.
And those are contacts that presumably you've still got and you can still make use of it. They're contacts you make for life, really, once you've done that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, my phone's stacked out with numbers of people that I've sort of come across here and there. And yeah, it's very, very regularly. I'll be, might ring someone for a bit of advice, or if they can do a job that I can't do, or anything in the middle, really. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were at Westley's for a while, and then you being a Dunstable boy, you came back down south and ended up at Purdey. So how did that come about?
Well, to be honest, I wasn't overly happy at Westley Richards. It was one of those ones where I loved the company, I loved the building, I especially loved the product. In my eyes, definitely one of the best products available. But the job itself, it wasn't for me, because the whole reason I left Ackland, Grant and Lang is because I wanted to build new guns, but more than that, I wanted to learn how to build new guns. And although when I was at Westley's, I was building new guns, I was kind of teaching myself how to do it, and it wasn't really what I wanted. What I wanted was to actually have someone show me how to do things and do it that way. So so that was the reason behind me leaving, really. And I spoke to a couple of people, a friend of mine actually, who got me the job at Westley's. By this point, he'd actually moved to Purdey's. So he sorted me out an interview down there. And I wanted to go into the action shop because metalwork's I've just always been sort of interested in it a little bit more. So I wanted to have an actioning job. So I went for an interview, spoke with them, sort of went through what I did and stuff like that. And then sort of they said there was no jobs. Sort of a couple of months went by, and then they sort of got in contact again, and they said they'd had something open up in the finishing shop, which would be more suited to the work that I already did. So I went down there. It's the first what I would call proper job interview I'd had. I mean, like most of my other job interviews have been in pubs. You know, my interview for Westies was in the Bull. That's just the way it was. Whereas this was a bit more of a corporate company, and everything was done. You know, I had to write a CV. Yeah, and things that people do when they have normal jobs. So that's sort of how I came about going down there.
So you ended up at Purdey's wanting to be an actioner, but put into the finishing shop. And who was your gaffer? Who did you apprentice with?
James McDonald, who is, like, in my opinion, the best. And I don't know as if he'll ever be sort of better as such. But yeah, so I'd met James through the trades maybe like once or twice, sort of over the years. But I didn't know he was going to be my gaffer till I turned up. And so it was only when it was sort of during the interview that they said, right, this guy's going to be teaching you. So he sort of come in and said, and it was when we walked through the door, and I was like, oh, I recognise him. I was like, oh, that's nice. It's a sort of sigh of relief, because at least it's someone you have a bit of recognition kind of thing. Yeah, and then
right. So he paid close attention to what you were doing from then on, did he?
Yeah. So at the time we were in Brunel Road, because the current factory was still being built. So my bench was behind his, and our agreement was it was a second apprenticeship. So my agreement was it'd be a condensed apprenticeship, being that I'd already done quite a lot of gun making jobs. But so 3 years is what it was going to be. And basically the start of it, I wouldn't do my own jobs. I'd help him with his jobs. So yeah, it would be, he'd explain how to do something, and then I would do it, and I would take him, and he'd say, no, polish that a bit more, and then he'd send me back, and I'd polish it a bit more, and you'd repeat that about 10 times, and then...
this is really what you were looking for, isn't it?
100%, yeah, 100%. It's just, when I went to London, it was, yeah, it's what I always wanted to do. And you have that sort of, being in that factory environment, you've got sort of everyone there in all the different trades. So if you were unsure about something, or you just found something interesting, you just go and ask them, and if you're nice to them, chances are they'll explain it to you. So
yeah, and they're only 2 or 3 benches away, so they're easy to get to.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, and they're generally all really nice guys in there, and yeah, it sort of worked out well.
How was the atmosphere at Purdey's for an apprentice? Were you the only one there at the time in your position, or were there a few of you?
There's a few. There's always like 4 or 5 apprentices at any one time. I was probably slightly different in that I was older. It's not overly common for someone to go from a qualified gun making job, because I sort of took a big fat pay cut as well, sort of to then go back and be an apprentice. So because of that, I was a bit older than a lot of the other apprentices. But yeah, I'd say it may be quite an intimidating place at first. Yeah, it's a strange, although it's, just a strange sort of place to work. I grew to sort of love it, but yeah, it's it's quite maybe.
You have to prove yourself to people that have been there for a long time that you can do it and fit in.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to. You just got to get your head down. I think it's like all places. If you just get your head down and crack on, everything's good.
Yeah. So you were there for 3 years. What were the most interesting things that you learned? What surprised you about your apprenticeship, or did it go as you'd expected?
Yeah, I mean, not really, because we kind of branched out a little bit. So it was a 3-year apprenticeship. I actually was there for about 7 years. So Yeah, initially it was sort of, I was going in to do finishing, and that's what I did. Because I had sort of skills in the jobbing side of things as well, I helped out with that, which is fine. It's sort of, you get nice Epurdey's to work on. It's a nice sort of work. Yeah, and then kind of took a turn when we sort of changed factory. So by this point, I'd already been like a qualified finisher, as it were, for a couple of years, which is great. It's probably my favourite work, to be fair. And then I I'm in an RM of leaving. I didn't really know whether to or not, but I was sort of toying with the idea, and I've always had quite an open sort of relationship with my boss at the time. So I sort of spoke to him about it.
When you say your boss, you mean this was the factory manager, was it?
Yeah. So I sort of spoke to him about it, and they said, well, we want to start doing these bolt actions, and we know you've got some experience doing that, because sort of during my time of finishing, I was also doing a lot of things like, sort of other things, sort of like machining sights for double rifles, regulating double rifles. I did build, even when I was finishing, I probably built like 3 or 4 bolt rifles and finished maybe 10 of them as well. Yeah. And then they said, well, we've been thinking about doing this new bolt action. Would you want to kind of get your teeth into doing a bit of that? And that sort of changed my mind then from wanting to leave, because I thought, this is fresh and exciting, and it's and it's good. And then so then basically I went from being in the finishing shop to sort of setting up my own little department, and sort of developing this rifle.
And that's what became the new Purdey bolt action, the one that they launched a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I came along. I remember coming along to talk to the chaps at the time, and just tell us a little bit about how that project was conceived. What was the plan? What were you asked to do?
Pretty much, it started off with the usual of, we want to make X amount of these guns, and then it was so sort of the concept behind it was that everyone else builds bolt rifles and sells a load of them, so why don't we? And then lots of discussions were had, and then it was sort of, what can we do that other people aren't doing? Because English bolt rifles, they're all good, but they're very samey. Whether, no matter where it comes from, they're all, you've got different house styles of engraving, but ultimately we're all using the same actions, and they are all very much the same. So then it was, well, what can we do to make something that other people aren't doing? And that's what the way it led us down the road of thinking, well, what do people actually want? That's, you've got to be the heart of the question, or the heart of what what you've got to think about when you're creating any product is what is your customer actually going to go, do you know what, that's actually really useful to me, so I'm going to go buy it. And then they said, well, what we really need to do is focus on the accuracy, because in traditional English bolt rifles, they're very, very elegant. They've got lovely lines, but a lot of the time they don't shoot as good as an out-of-box modern rifle. Yeah. So that's something we looked to broach, and then just went through lots of different sort of avenues, and eventually found after quite a lot of sort of research and development and trying different things, we found a platform that really worked well, and then we got cracking with making them.
So that was your project. You headed up that little team, did you?
Yeah, I had 2 apprentices as well, which was great, because one of which I got to recruit myself, which was nice. And it was I'd say probably, that was probably one of the best things about it, was actually having your own team. So I had one apprentice who had sort of done work experience at the firm before, who was really good. So he came along. He was already sort of in the bank, and then we said, well, we need to get another one as well. So basically just put out an advertisement on Instagram for, wanting gun-making apprentice, looking to do bolt actions, XYZ. Had a bit of interest, not like huge amounts, but yeah, and then sort of found another apprentice through there. Both of which are still there. One's now in the stocking shop, has moved over from the bolt rifles and doing the stocking shop, doing really well. The other one's still in the bolt rifle shop there. But yeah, that was it. And obviously, a few outworkers as well, helping out with bits and bobs. Yeah.
What was the single most difficult skill you had to learn that took you along from the beginning of your apprenticeship to the point where you were running your own team?
Well, I suppose there's two different ways of looking at it. Like in terms of physical skills, in terms of like the work, there's some jobs that are just much more complicated than others. So for me, it would probably be like sort of sight work on double rifles, because I sort of taught myself to do it just because no one would do it, and me being a bit of an idiot goes, oh yeah, I'll do it. And sort of, once you've said you do something, you've got to prove yourself, really. So yeah, in terms of physical work, that's a job that I still, even now, I wouldn't say I find it difficult as such, but it's a job that I'll never rush into. I'll always make sure I sort of sit down and do my calculations and work everything out before I sort of get machining lumps of barrel out and whatnot. And then the other side of it is actually, when I did this, I'd never been in a position where I'd always been a worker for, still a worker, but always been a worker with just one single direct boss, which was just easy, really, because your boss tells you what to do and then you do it, and then that's that. Whereas then when I took on that role, it was a case of actually I've spent, all of a sudden overnight, I spent half my week in meetings, and then, actually dealing with people a lot more, which I enjoyed, but it's a very different sort of skill set.
Yeah. So you were at Purdey's for 7 years, thereabouts.
Yeah.
And then you decided to take the plunge and go out on your own. What made you want to do that? I mean, there are some people that stay in places like Purdey's for their entire careers. What made you want to go on your own?
To be honest, just the lifestyle, really. I mean, I've always liked the idea of working for myself, but the actual driving force was just a change of lifestyle. I mean, I love Purdey's, and if it was outside of London, I'd probably still be working there. But it's one of those things where you have, when you're working in London, you've got the choice of either spending 3 or 4 hours a day in the car, or living in not sort of ideal sort of living conditions, because the prices in town. So when I left, I was in a house share with a friend of mine who also worked at Purdey, and then 2 other girls. The rooms sort of like a single bed times 2, and that's your room. We didn't have like a living room. We had a little kitchen, and that was like a third of my wages. That was gone already just for that sort of thing. And at the time, I'd sort of just bought a house as well. So it was kind of, I was leaving home Monday morning, coming back Thursday night. And yes, the job was good, but I was never at home. And I just thought, do you know what, for me, it's more, I wanted the little things. I wanted to be able to get a dog. I wanted to be able to go home every night. And that was it, really. That was the main.
At that time, you got the skills to be able to do that, I suppose. I remember talking to you years ago and talking about deferred gratification, because it was such a schlep to sort of live in Dunstable and have to go into Purdey's every day. And whereas it would be much easier to just stay and work on your doorstep. But actually, 7 years later, you developed the skills that enabled you to do this and to go and work any way you wanted. And of course, like everybody that sets up in business, did you have the sort of fear that you'd get no work when you first began?
Oh yeah, 100%. And still now, at the moment, I mean, I haven't actually asked for work as such. It just sort of had a couple of jobs that I knew were going to come in. But I mean, you just don't know. I mean, I'm quite fortunate, especially in our sort of current situation with everything I've got enough. I keep maybe 2 or 3 months work sort of sat waiting to be done, which is great. But when that's gone, you never know. There might not be another job on the back of that.
I mean, if it's any consolation, in my experience, anybody in your position that's any good will just get work. I remember talking to Mitchell about this years ago, and when he left Purdey's in about 1983, he said he sat at home chewing his fingernails, wondering whether anybody would ever send him work, and he's been
Yeah.
working since. So
Yeah.
I think a Purdey apprenticeship serves you very well and gives you the sort of reputation and skills
Mm.
people like me are looking for when we're hoping to find somebody to work on our kit, be it new build or restorations.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I hope so. Yeah, the thing is, so many people said the same thing.
Restorations, or are you mostly working on new stuff at the moment?
At the moment, I'm only working on new stuff, but that's not out of choice. That's just because that's what came my way.
Yeah.
I'll happily work on. To be honest, I'll work on anything. I'm not overly fussy. I'll happily do. I mean, the focus of my business was more aimed towards sort of higher end stuff because I enjoy it more. No, for no other reason than that I prefer to work on it. But yeah, I'll do restorations, I'll do new builds, rifles, repairs, and anything in the middle, really, sort of whatever. I think it's more because I've been building guns more than repairing them over the last few years. That's more what I was known for. So that's almost like a natural progression. That's the work that sort of came my way. I've actually been, since I left, I've probably spent more time doing actioning than I have actually doing finishing, even though finishing is my main sort of job. But
it's interesting, isn't it? And you're constantly learning. The more as a new job comes in, you focus on something different and you learn it, and then you end up being better at it, which is one of the joys of the variety of work.
Yeah, I mean, the first when I left the factory, I only had one job, which was a finishing job on a double rifle. And I've never worked on this type of double rifle before, so it probably took me 3 or 4 times as long as it actually should do to get the work done, purely because it was something I hadn't done before, and you're sort of extra careful and a bit, trying to make sure everything's exactly as it should be. So yeah, every day's a school day in that sense. I think it always will be.
Keeps it interesting, doesn't it? Now, do you think? I mean, anybody watching this who's perhaps got ambitions to become a gun maker, do you think anybody could have learned the skills that you've learned if they'd been through the process you've been through? Or do you need particular talents and skills and aptitudes?
No, I'd say you don't need any particular skills because you just practice. For me, I think anyone could do it. You just got to want to do it. That's the thing. I mean, at the end of the day, we are just literally taking metal off other bits of metal and wood off of other bits of wood. So
but you are doing it better than anybody else can do it.
Yeah, potentially, hopefully. But I think it's just a case of you want it. I mean, for 5 of my years at Purdey, I was out of the house at 5:30 and I was getting back at 8 o'clock at night. Did that make me a better gun maker? Yeah, because I got loads more hours in, and I got loads more experience. If you want to, and I think if anyone's got that drive to go, actually, no, I'm going to do it. I don't mind spending the hours in the car and the time away from home. Move to Birmingham, move here, move there. Yeah, I think anyone can do it. Really, just got to want to do it.
And you've got you say you've had 1 or 2 of your own apprentices. Do you have anybody you're working with at the moment?
Not at the moment. I'd like to, and long term, that's definitely something. I would, in the perfect world, I would like to have, have more space and have my own apprentices. But at the moment, I'm just concentrating on trying to stay in business for a while before I go down that road.
Yeah, and again, for youngsters who are perhaps watching this and interested, what sort of things would you potentially look for in an apprentice? What sort of advice can you give somebody who's hoping to impress someone like you when they're looking for an apprenticeship?
I mean, for me, it's all about attitude. 100%. Everything else can sort itself out in time. It's all about attitude. I mean, funnily enough, actually, was one thing that's quite interesting. My first apprentice, who started with me at Westley Richards, he's now running the bolt action department at Purdey. Because when I left, I knew he'd be a good candidate for the job. And again, he loves it, so that's, quite a good story, for how people kind of move about a bit. But my one apprentice that I actually recruited myself, a girl called Macy, she was the one that came from the Instagram advert. And I got talking to her. She was, at the time, doing like gamekeeping at college. Her father was gamekeeper. and that something like that instantly says to me, you're getting up in the morning, you're going out, you're out lamping at night, all these things that I know come with that sort of job. You've got to love it. So I'd say that to any youngster. It's just, I think anyone it's very hard to get into, but if you have the drive to keep trying, once you have a job, I think anyone, if you just keep going in, keep working hard, anyone can make it, really.
That's interesting. So are you confident about the future of the British gun trade at the moment? What sort of challenges do you think it's facing over the next 10 years?
I've got to be confident in it, because then I'll have to go and do something else if not. I think in the UK, public attitude, from just my personal view, I think public attitude is not a good thing for gun making, just because people don't really like guns anymore, as a rule of thumb. And I think there's a big misunderstanding about guns and stuff like that. I mean, I don't tell people I'm a gun maker if I meet them, because it opens up all sort of questions, and my eyes probably normally quite stupid questions, and I just think people don't associate craft with gun making. They sort of, as a sort of general public, anything to do with guns is just violent and bad. I think that's something that will hinder the gun trade, as a rule. And I think it's actually been proven in sort of country sports in general, how sort of over the years, if you look at the decline in people that are interested in them, that may be wrong. I don't know if that's true, or I've just made it up just as sort of an observation more than anything. That for me is probably one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah, and what about the sort of work that's coming through? Have you've seen the increase in the use of new technology in the gun trade? How has that changed the traditional work? I mean, you mentioned your work as an actioner. How has machinery affected the sort of traditional actioning work in particular?
So it depends how good the machinery is, because some kits are better than others. It's shaved a lot of time out, which is good. And to be honest, it's had a lot of the time it's put the quality up. So it's a lot of people are against machinery. I'm quite for it. I think it's good that it's good that you got the skill set to be able to get a block of steel, get on the Bridgeport, and actually machine it into an action body. But in reality, in terms of businesses, I just don't think it's viable. I dread to think how much I'd have to charge for a gun if I was to say, look, I'm more than capable of doing it. But if I sort of said to someone, look, I'm going to actually physically machine every single piece from solid, the amount of hours involved in that would be astronomical.
Yeah.
So I've got quite a rare view in that I'm sort of quite pro machining. I'm happy that I can do it the old way, and if called upon, I can do that. And if I only had to make one off, I still would go for doing a lot of stuff that way. But for sort of batch production, it's the only way to go. And I think there's a sort of common misconception about our use of machinery as well. Just recently, I think in February, I went to the British Shooting Show, and I took pictures with me. Some of the Beasley style lock work. And the idea with that is I had the sort of parts laid out all the different stages across. And there's this idea that traditional gun making is sort of almost winging it, where you do everything by hand and stuff like that. But it's just not. Traditional gun making, it just includes different ways of getting the repeatability. For instance, jigs and fixtures. So for me, is there really a difference between me getting a block of metal, putting it on a fixture that's going to have little drill guides that I've made and hardened tempered myself to drill my 6 holes in the right place, or it goes on a milling machine and that does it instead? I don't think in the end product it really matters too much, but everyone's got strong opinions about it, shall we say.
Yeah, that's true enough. I always wonder if the Victorians had the equipment, would they have used it? And I think they would have done.
I mean, you can see through what they did. You can see that they would have. Again, like looking at the jigs and fixtures. The Victorian way of working wasn't. It was very far from the sort of the artisan work we have now, where you have sort of one person does quite a lot, like for instance, like action in a whole gun. They just didn't used to do that. They'd have one person, for the bigger lots of production anyway, they'd have one person sort of crashing out just lever work and lever work and lever work and lever work and lever work. Still very, very, very high standard, but it was about getting. It was about business. It was about getting guns out the door.
Very much so. I mean, the old business owners were very hard nosed. So just away from the bench, what do you? Are you a shooter? Some gunsmiths and gun makers don't actually shoot, and some are very keen. Where do you fall these days?
At the moment, I like to shoot. I don't have time to shoot. I'm going to start doing a bit more stalking because I just don't do any, and it's something I really enjoy. So now I can start doing a bit more of that. I maybe shoot probably, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 days in the season, but basically they're days I get invited on because I'm too tight to pay for any. So that's it in a nutshell. And
what do you shoot with?
At the moment I've got a Riley side-by-side, which I picked up for sort of next to nothing. It's in bits again because I shot it last season with a slip-on leather pad on it. So it's, at the moment, I'm putting a horn extension on it as and when I can, sort of squeeze it in between other jobs. But yeah, it's like quite a nice, a strange old box lock. It's a self-opener, sort of 30-inch Damascus barrels. It's got a plain restock on it, but it's a gun that's going to be quite nice. It's cost me not a lot of money, so that's for me. That's cool. That's where I want to be.
And if I were to ask you who you think we should interview next, which figures in the gun trade that you've come into contact with in terms of being real gun makers, people that know their craft and have really learned and got things that they could teach by talking to us, who would you single out as some of the people that are worth talking to?
It's hard to say, really. I think there's more than people think. There's a lot of guys like one-man bands working at home that no one sort of knows about, but are incredibly talented. I'd say for me, Lee here in the workshop, Lee Butler, he's up there with one of my sort of mentors who sort of helped me the most outside of the factory sort of environment. You say there's lots of people that are good at their craft. I would say he'd be different in the fact that he's as good as sort of action art, a general gun maker. So can finish a gun, knows the ins and outs of the process, which is hugely important. And a lot of guys in the factory. There's guys at the factory that have been there 45 years, and as you say, and they're, what they don't know, just basically what they don't know doesn't exist. If you can't, the history that these guys you sort of carry with them, it's unparalleled.
That's right. Nobody ever sees them, and nobody picks their brains. And that's one of the things I'm hoping that we can do, is to create an archive of knowledge and oral history that people can keep with them, because we value it, and I think it needs to be recorded and valued, because it's very important background which we'll lose if we don't take some care of it.
Yeah, definitely. I love it getting to speak to some of the old guys, because they're, they've all got good stories to tell, and even just learning about sort of the way that if you learn enough about how the way stuff used to be done, it actually opens your eyes up to getting around problems that you've got now, because in a way, a lot of the time you go full circle. So from that point of view, there's a lot of knowledge out there.
So what's next for Ian? What are you working on at the moment, and what are you expecting in 6 months?
To be honest, just like getting through the jobs, really. I've got the next 6 months. I think really it's just a case of try and get some more work in and do it. Really, I'm not at the moment. It's I've got some plans for some stuff that I'm going to do sort of teetering along in the background with some new builds of my own sort of design. But they are huge undertakings. So for the moment, I'm just sort of playing around, drawing stuff up. To go from that to finished product is going to be 2 or 3 years. I've got some bolt rifles, which I'm again working on, sort of in between when I get spare. But yeah, for me, for the moment, my plan is just to really just to keep going with it, try and get some and do them. That's pretty much the goal, I think, for any sort of startup business.
Absolutely, and you've got through this. You've been self-employed for a year or more now.
7 months.
Okay, well, you're still there and still filing metal.
Yeah.
So far, so good. And of course, you were at Burnley's for a long time. You were at Westley's for a while. You weren't at Holland's, but Holland and Holland is the basic, what's become the trade,
Right.
hasn't it, for custom guns. For you, Holland, Westley, or Purdey action, which is the number one?
They're just different. Yeah, I don't know, because they're different. I mean, I like them for different reasons, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I don't know. I think Purdey's probably Purdey. Sorry?
I'm giving you one as a gift. Which one would you like?
It would probably be the Purdey. But only because I just think the mechanism on it is ingenious.
It is. It's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, even now after working on loads,
it's so reliable, but the Purdey is just a piece of genius the way it's been constructed.
Yeah, and then, but having said that, even though it's got a few more bits in it, I've seen Purdeys that are, have huge amounts of neglect and are just rattling all over the place after 100 or so years, but they still just keep hammering on. So when they're set up right, they are still really, really reliable. So, but yeah, I suppose more bits to potentially break, I suppose. But yeah,
but like you say, if they're made properly by know what they're doing, and they are remarkably robust. As long as you don't mess about it. But Ian, thank you so much for joining us. That's been fascinating. I'm going to let you go now and have some supper, because it's early evening as we speak, and we're still in the middle of the coronavirus lockdown. So you're okay with your haircut. My haircut's starting to become one of the suspects. I almost wore a hat. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great to see you doing well, and we'll catch up again soon.
Okay, take care.